Alright everybody, welcome back to We Play Games. I'm Walker, and here we are in Humankind, about to resume our tutorial series with Humankind, moving into the Industrial Era. So, as I discussed in the Early Modern Era video, once you start getting into that Early Modern and / Industrial Era, you do want to start looking forward to the future. You want to start thinking about not just how are you going to win the game in terms of fame, but also critically, how are you going to end the game? Because if you do what I'm encouraging you to do, and trying to take like kind of a longer Neolithic and a shorter Ancient and Classical, you're invariably going to end up behind any of the AI who managed to take every single star during every single era. It's just sort of the way the game is going to play out. But if we do our best to try to close the game out by reaching one of the endgame conditions as quickly as possible, in this case I think we're going to be aiming towards the contemporary era, getting all of the 21 stars, that is going to allow us to end the game on our terms, right? We're going to catch the golden snitch, and hopefully we'll actually win by catching it, not just score a bunch of points and then lose. But fortunately there's a ton of fame that's available even outside of these era stars. For instance, there are these competitive deeds. You will of course also get a whole lot of fame whenever you're scoring construction of wonders, and so there's lots and lots of ways for you to catch up on fame, or stay ahead on fame as it were, if you're willing to commit to that. That means that time is one of these things that is simultaneously a resource for you to balance, both for good and for ill, right? If we take too long trying to build up fame during some of these later periods when we're already ahead, we might give the opportunity to some of our competition, or in this case our friends in teal, to try to close out that fame gap and knock us out of first place. You don't want to do that, so you do want to be on the gas as much as humanly possible when it comes to Humankind. So in this case we went with the Venetians just so that we could start shoring up some of our weaknesses here. If you're trying to do a world conquest, or you're trying to vassalize everybody, then understanding where your weaknesses are is not very important when it comes to your culture. Same if you're trying to just build a rocket to Mars. But if you're trying to score all 21 stars in the contemporary era, then it's very, very important that you take some of these picks later on to help your civilization fill in the slots that you're weakest on. So in this case, merchant stars are typically going to be pretty difficult to actually score without a whole lot of infrastructure. Unfortunately, the infrastructure in Humankind is generally not great outside of some of the really, really important buildings and districts. But of course that means that some of the things that you're going to be building are mostly going to be some really nice wonders, and so you're going to get good value out of industry no matter what. But it means that merchant stars, science stars, estate stars, you can see we only scored 1 star of those in each of them during this early modern period. And so what I'm going to tell us here in this case is we're going to go into Persians. So from a broad meta perspective, whether it's industry or science, whatever, it doesn't matter, flat bonuses are generally going to be best at the beginning of the game, because they're just going to act as pseudo pops, you know, a +6 of whatever when it comes to resources at the beginning of the game is just sort of a stand-in for a population. As the game goes on and you make more and more resources, as you make more widgets, whatever it is, a percentage-based bonus is generally going to outstrip a flat bonus. But once you reach the end of the game, then industry, or reduction on costs for things, is generally going to even outstrip those percentage-based bonuses. So here, this is going to be -25% on shared project industry cost and -25% on constructibles industry cost. That means that Persians stack together on themselves to make your wonders 50% cheaper. I'm not sure if this is actually intended, but it's very, very, very powerful. And so what it means is, in this particular case, because we've identified where the weaknesses currently are in our civilization and ways for us to stay ahead on fame by spending all of our influence, which we're going to have, just a lot of influence kind of floating around on world wonders, that Persians make sense as our next culture. So we're going to adopt them. But we're also going to just throw in a civic here. I didn't notice that we have access to trade resources. Trade resources, giving you a resource deposit access to create wondrous resource deposits, is fantastically powerful because of course, how powerful wondrous boosters are. In this case, most of the Wondrous Boosters we're going to have anyway, but this one is going to get us an extra 10% food on all cities, and all it cost us was a tiny amount of gold here. So there's no reason for us to not do that. It gets us a little bit of extra good value. And in this case, we actually even have enough money that I feel all right just buying out a couple of these things if we really, really wanted to. Like, we could build out some saltpeter mines and rapidly score one more builder star. With that little bit of extra fame secured, let's go ahead and jump into the Persians and see how the industrial era shakes out for us. So in this case, because we are trying to rush ahead to the contemporary era and finish all of the stars there inside the contemporary era, we are going to need to keep an eye on what sort of things we're going to need, not just in terms of the weaknesses of our civilization, but also just the things we literally need in order to accomplish it. In this case, you literally probably need to go to war at least once. In the mid to late game, you're going to need to destroy an awful lot of units in order to get all of your militarist stars, and just as much, you're going to need to do a lot of expansion in order to get all of your expansionist stars. And so when you're trying to do an all-era rush in the contemporary era, you do need to plan out who you're going to declare war on. In this case, it might make sense for us to declare war on Teal just to knock them out of competition, but of course, that's not the only way to accomplish things here in Humankind. If you like having long-term friends, even though it is going to benefit them to be your friend long-term, you can definitely attack other folks. And in this case, I think we're almost certainly going to be attacking the Mongols. The Mongols just don't look like they're going to be a particularly big threat by the contemporary era. They're way, way behind on fame, and you can see their capital is only size 17, so we should have a pretty easy time knocking them and their orange vassal here, the Huns, out of competition, or at least taking a lot of their stuff and growing from there. But that is something that you really do want to start planning around at this point. How you're going to end the game is very, very, very important when it comes to winning the game in Humankind. But now we have enough influence that we can just start plowing it into cultural wonders. And of course, in this case, we're going to do Topkapi Palace, just so we get the extra production towards any shared project. And then we'll pick up Brussels Town Hall, and then we'll just build basically whatever we can, just so that way we get as much fame as possible, while also maximizing the amount of construction that we get. Topkapi Palace getting 100% production towards any shared project is really, really good if you're going to be doing a lot of cultural wonders. And in this case, because we have the ability to click Land Raiser, we are going to do a lot of cultural wonders. This is sort of inevitable. There are going to be some civics that are going to be offered to you as the game goes on that you kind of don't need to spend the influence on. It really just depends on your setup in terms of your economics. But like, artistic expression largely doesn't do a whole lot for you. Political entitlement can be nice, but in this case, we're not going to need to be doing a lot of fighting in the late game, except against people that hopefully we can trample over without any issue. And of course, this 1,678 cost is not the be-all end-all, because every single civic that you pick in turn is going to increase the cost of all of the other civics that you take. So there's a real balancing act when it comes to how do you approach civics in the mid to late game. Now, when it comes to technology in the industrial era, I really do think that you want to pick up Steam Engine ASAP. Steam Engine allows you to exploit coal, and coal, of course, being another resource, is just going to allow you to build even more districts as quickly as possible. And given what our goal is here, I think we're going to try to get through the industrial era and into the contemporary basically as soon as we can, just so that we can start working on those 21 stars inside the contemporary era. Now, the industrial era, gives you access to some really, really important technologies and ways to utilize coal once you've identified where you have it on the map. So in this case, we've picked up steam engines, and that means we can take coal generators. Coal generators is going to get us +1 food per coal on each quarter of each type. And because of the way emblematic districts work, and the way a lot of them count as multiple types of districts, electricity, and for that matter, microbiology, anything that reduces these costs here is just very, very powerful. But electricity, I think, is generally the easiest and fastest payoff for steam engines once you get it. It's just really, really great. And of course, by intentionally delaying some of the cheaper technologies, we are going to set ourselves up to rapidly make technological progress and therefore score technology stars during the contemporary era. This is something that you do kind of want to play around with trying to figure out exactly what the best way to approach your contemporary era is. But in this case, I like having some of the cheaper technologies around, just so that way we can make really, really quick progress once we hit there. I also really like to do a little bit of scouting and see if you can identify something like a hostile free city. And in this case, we found a hostile free city that we should be able to get our troops to once we're done with the Nubians here. So we're going to go ahead and declare war against these guys, finish them off, and then we'll start marching our troops out west so that way we can bang out the Visigoths and then hopefully take care of Green, the Mongols over here. And that's where the fact that we're starting to build up our rail is actually going to be really nice, because it'll let our troops very rapidly move from the eastern side of this continent out to the west where they're needed. Alright, so by beginning that war against the Nubians, we actually have found our way towards enough fame and enough stars here in the industrial era that we actually can make progress into the contemporary era. Now, again, normally it makes sense to do some sort of balance in regards to your fame, but because we intentionally were fast at the beginning of the game, that means that if we take too long to close the game out, then that'll afford opportunities for the AI to catch up. So in this case, we're just going to see if there's anything we can do about spending a little bit of money. Maybe we can merge some things or annex some territories or whatever. But if we can't, then we're going to send this turn, just so that way we can get started on our contemporary era rush and try to close the game out that way. But just looking around at the map, I don't see anything that looks like an opportunity for us to score any extra points this turn, and I don't think that it's going to benefit us a whole lot by waiting, because we're already completed on the militarist stars here. These wars against the Nubians are certainly going to help us get a little bit of extra fame, so I think what we're going to be doing is ending the industrial era here in 1344 CE, and then picking up with the contemporary era in our next episode. Alright, that's Walker. Take care.